announce the drops?
Yes.
So that'll be.
Starting to sell?
No, I'm just
No,
gonna.
we can't.
No, I'm gonna announce the drops, the
Oh,
ones that are
yeah.
dropped. Before we start the meeting, I wanted to announce that item number 4, AB 1140 by Mr. Donnelly, has been dropped by the author, and also AB 1312, item number 5, has been dropped by the author. The bills that remain are item 1, AB 254, item 2, AB 479, and item 3, AB 671. And we'll start as soon as we get more members. Okay, I call the meeting of the Assembly Human Services Committee. We do not have a quorum, so we'll conduct business as a subcommittee until we get a quorum. And Mr. Swanson will replace Member Hall for today. I mentioned that the bills will be in order of well, whoever shows up. We only have 3 bills. A testimony, we're going to limit testimony to 2 witnesses for each side, 3 minutes per witness. Please observe the rules, and we'll conduct our business. And as I mentioned earlier, 2 items are not going to be heard today. That's AB 1140, item number 4, and item number 5, AB 1312. The authors have requested those bills be dropped. And so we have remaining on the agenda items 1, 2, and 3. And since neither author for 2 and 3 are here, I can present AB 254. And I'll turn the subcommittee gavel over to the vice chair.
Mr. Jones, if I may, I just wanted to clarify, I am not here to replace anyone, but I'm here as a guest of the chair today. So thank you. Oh, I guess the
Are we
mic's
good
on.
on the mic side? Okay. All right, Mr. No,
No, they're not on. No.
Now we have a quorum.
All right, Mr. Bell is going to present AB 254. Mr. Bell. Oh, do we have a quorum now? Mr. Bell, I'm going to ask for the secretary to call the roll so we can establish a quorum.
Right.
Bell,
Here.
Jones,
Here.
Amiano, Grove, Swanson,
Present.
Portantino.
Mr. Bell, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all the committees for 2012. And this bill I'm presenting today to the Assembly Human Services Committee is AB 254. AB 254 is a very important bill that deals with developmental disabilities, work participation. The national workforce participation rate for people without disabilities is 68%, according to the statistics. And in California, the work participation rate for working age people with developmental disabilities is approximately 21%, and that's below even the national average of 24%. And of those Californians with developmental disabilities who work, more than 3 times as many are in a group or segregated employment settings, typically earning less than a minimum wage, than are in integrated work settings earning competitive wage. Integrated work settings are work settings that are essentially private sector, public sector work settings that we all have for ourselves, as opposed to being in a segregated group kind of work setting. So we can do better. We want to do better than the 21% rate. AB 254 continues the work started by the bill in 2009, AB 287, which established the Employment First Committee within the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Among the committee's first tasks under AB 287 was to propose an Employment First policy by which the state of California would make integrated competitive employment the top priority outcome for working age adults with developmental disabilities, and that's the subject of our bill, AB 254. The Employment First policy first establishes a priority for the state, and as AB 254 makes clear, the policy does not set priorities for any individual or any way limit individual choice. In fact, implementation of an Employment First policy in California, which is prioritizing services and support for integrated employment, will actually enhance individual choice by expanding employment options and resources. Adopting an Employment First policy in California, as being done in a growing number of states, will not in itself result in a significant increase in employment. However, it's a significant first step setting a direction to guide future efforts. Moving more people with developmental disabilities into the workforce who earn competitive wages will result in increased tax revenues and reduced reliance on public services and benefits. It'll be good for business, good for the economy, and good for working age people with developmental disabilities. And I ask for an aye vote on this measure. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and there are witnesses, I think, that want to speak.
I'm going to ask the sergeant, how do you want to accommodate the witnesses?
I have in favor, and then the next 3 are in opposition to the language.
Great.
So I think we'll just carry on with in favor, and then clear the room, and then get
Okay.
to opposition. Thank you.
We'll take witnesses in support, please.
We have a portable mic, right? Do we have a mic?
Well, we did this morning.
There's a mic that can be handed down. Sure. You wanna sit?
You could sit or...
Wherever you'd like.
Okay, whenever the witnesses are ready.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I am Olivia Rayner, the director of the Tarjan Center at UCLA, a university center of excellence in developmental disabilities. But I'm here today as the chair of the Employment First Committee of the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. We believe that AB 254, as amended, provides clarity, definition, and respect to individuals with developmental disabilities by expecting an adult outcome of labor force participation and income generation rather than one of lifelong dependence and poverty. The legislation clarifies the intentions of the services and supports provided to individuals with developmental disabilities by setting a vision and expectation for work. Of course, we need adequate public resources to obtain quality education and integrated employment outcomes. However, without higher expectations, individuals with developmental disabilities often settle for programs or services that do not encourage them to participate fully in the mainstream of community life. This is confirmed by the fact that the majority of working-age adults with significant disabilities in California are supported today in programs that offer segregation and long-term dependency regardless of cost. We believe that the proposed state policy establishes employment as a priority outcome for individuals with developmental disabilities, but it is also consistent with existing policy that supports individuals with developmental disabilities the right to make informed choices about their lives. There have been individuals who have misrepresented the intent of this legislation as removing choice. There is no intent to remove choice or mandate employment. Rather, the legislation recognizes the normative activities for young adults who leave high school, and that is the opportunity to earn money, contribute to their communities, and importantly, pay taxes. The legislation would support successful transition by providing individuals and their families with information about school-to-work opportunities. The transition period can be a difficult time for many young adults and families as they seek needed supports which will enable them to be successful after high school in the areas of post-secondary education, employment, and community living. The provision of information and the option to have the regional center participate in the IEP would facilitate students and families access to needed programs and services so that the student can achieve his or her post-school goal. Interagency coordination has long been recognized as a key factor in post-school success. And then I'll just conclude briefly by telling you that the key state departments in California have already made a commitment to advance competitive integrated employment. The Tarjan Center, my program, recently received a highly coveted 5-year project of national significance employment systems change grant from the Administration on Developmental Disabilities on behalf of the Department of Developmental Services, Rehabilitation, Education, and the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. The purpose of this grant is to demonstrate a collaborative approach to creating employment systems change to increase the number of youth and young adults with developmental disabilities in competitive integrated employment. The departments have already committed to establishing an employment consortium that will set a vision and expectation for competitive integrated employment, support the development of innovative practices at the local level, provide training and professional development to families, service providers, educators, and professionals, and to utilize existing data to establish measures of progress. Through this project, California has already made a commitment to create pathways to competitive integrated employment for youth and young adults with developmental disabilities. And I thank you for this opportunity to testify today. So thank you.
Thank you. 3 minutes, right on the mark. You must have practiced a little.
Wow, thanks.
Next speaker in support. for
Evelyn
3
Abu
minutes.
Hassan with Disability Rights California. My remarks are going to be short because, in many ways, Disability Rights California agrees with the comments that were made by the previous speaker. Just really briefly, this bill is a good first step towards moving toward integrated employment for individuals with disabilities. We know that individuals with developmental disabilities want integrated employment and the opportunities don't exist. This really provides a real meaningful choice for people with disabilities that don't have a meaningful choice at this time. And everything happens within the context of the Lanterman, the IPP process as outlined in the Lanterman Act. So the idea that choice would be taken away is a fallacy. With those key points, I'll conclude my testimony and be happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you. Mr. Belli, since that was a short testimony, do you have other witnesses maybe today in support that might want to take 1 or 2 minutes?
Molly.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dwight Hanson on behalf of the California Disability Services Association. We applaud Chairman Bell for bringing forward this issue on employment. It's not been an issue of a lot of attention in the last many years, and since Assemblyman Bell has been here, it has in fact elevated, and we appreciate that very much. We support the whole concept of getting better integrated, higher wages for people with developmental disabilities. We've made some comments on some amendments that we think would strengthen this issue. We're not concerned that there's a limiting of choice for people with employment. We would like to see greater choice for people with employment. What we're concerned is that this would be the first time in the Lanterman Act where a choice is the preferred outcome for all people with developmental disabilities. It can't possibly be that all people with developmental disabilities, any more than all of us, would make the same decision about everything we want to do. So we're suggesting that we strengthen, in fact, the comments that have been made here by the witnesses in support, which we also agree, by just saying that there's nothing in this bill to be interpreted to suggest that somebody can't choose a different service than they're now able to choose, and that there won't be any decision made by a regional center or by anyone else that will deprive somebody of a choice because this is a priority program for the state. Secondly, I think the issue, and we're not going to tell you that you have to put a bunch of cost into this bill in order to get it forward. We read the budget too. We get it. But the reality is that the state has not invested in the kind of support necessary to get the employment outcomes. So what we would love to see is a greater discussion about that. I passed the first bill in 1996 that created a standalone employment services funding system at $27.50, 1996. Today, the rate is $30.63. So over all of those years, we've been flat in our funding. The first big cut to funding for support in this latest budget crisis, the first big cut was a 10% rate cut to supported employment. We cannot have as a state a priority to get employment outcomes if we don't make it a priority for funding. So we look forward to working forward with the author. Most of these amendments are technical in nature and are consistent with the intent. So we look forward to working forward with them. And thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Yes, I'm Molly Kennedy. I live in Carlsbad, California. I'm on the state council. Consumer Advocacy Advisory Council. AB 254, Employment First, is a win-win-win. It's like 999, but it's a win-win-win. I think this is better. A win for people with disabilities, a win for employees, and a win for the state of California. According to the 2011 National Report on Outcomes and Services, it states from 2002 and 2009 the percentage of individuals with developmental disabilities going into integrated employment has gone from 24% to 15%. We're going backwards. So the choice that's right now doesn't seem like it's a good choice if it's going backwards. This will allow individuals the choice that every citizen usually makes to get a good job, to get a good salary, to live on their own, to be self-sufficient. Why would people with disabilities want to choose something else? I mean, they can. We're not saying they can't, but I bet most would not. And when you work, you're part of a community. So they would be not segregated, they'd be integrated. A win for employees where people with developmental disabilities untapped resources. They are known to be very hardworking, reliable, and productive employees, even better than those with non-disabled. Sometimes, not always. And it's a return on your investment. Positive social marketing that increases your business and innovation in your business. That is the win for employers with this bill. And for the state of California, the win is, well, let's face it, we're in dire need to cut critical programs that support people with disabilities. If they supported themselves, they wouldn't need these programs, and we wouldn't need to have such big entitlement program. And we don't want to be a state that has high unemployment rate. And that means we want all people working, including people with developmental disabilities. In a time when the state is cutting, AB 254 would not cut programs. It would create a program that brings in more revenue to the state because people that work pay taxes. And that's why I feel AB is a win for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support, if you can just give your name and affiliation, please.
Absolutely. Rick Rollins, representing ARCA, Association of Regional Center Agencies. So we have a support, if amended, position on the bill. We were the proud co-sponsors of AB 287, the previous bill. Look forward to work with the author as the bill moves through the process.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in support?
Tony Anderson, the Executive Director of the ARC of California, in collaboration with the ARC and UCP in California. And we're in support, if amended, and we're happy to be working with the author to fix that through. Very minor details, but that we're on record of support as if amended.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in
Chairman, just a quick question, both the gentlemen. If amended, could you just give me 20 seconds on that, if amended and if amended, 20 seconds.
Yes, sir. In your analysis, there is a well-done outline of the concerns that we have with the bill right now, and primarily it's around workload issues and also addressing the issues around the interrelationship between the regional centers and school districts. We think that needs to be addressed.
Okay, is that the same?
Mr. Bell, are you aware of the amendment?
Yeah, we're working, and we will continue to work with all these groups and to their satisfactory conclusion on these kind of minor issues. But we'll take care of these amendments.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Ours are slightly different. Ours are slightly different. We're focused on the autonomy and authority of the individual with a disability in their own IPP meeting, and we're concerned with some of the wording, but we think that we've offered some simple amendment language that could correct that.
Great. Thank you. Other witnesses in support, name and affiliation, please.
Rene Bayardo, SEIU, California. We strongly support the employment first policy.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? All right, seeing no other witnesses in support, witnesses opposed, please. It's going to take a moment to exchange the seating arrangement here, so if everybody will just please bear with us. Are you speaking in opposition? Yes. Okay, if yeah, please have a seat and you can begin speaking. We'll give you 3 minutes. If there's no other speakers, I might let you go a little bit over.
All right.
We'll see.
I think we've got some other speakers that are going to be working their way up here,
Okay.
so I will try to time my comments to coincide with their arrival.
All right.
Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name's Chad Carlock. I'm a family member of a person with a disability. My uncle is a regional center client in Southern California. I'm also an attorney who's worked for many years with providers and with families served under the Lanterman Act. And I'm currently the president of Keeping the Lanterman Promise, which is a group of parents and advocates dedicated to preserving and protecting the entitlement and the IPP process. At the direction of the legislature 2 years ago now, the State Council put a lot of time and a lot of effort into developing the policy that now comes back to you in this bill today. They've created a very long, very detailed, and excellent report on the status of employment for persons with disabilities in California. And they're to be commended on their work. However, none of the data that they gathered on the barriers to employment, nor any of their suggestions as to what the state must do to address those barriers has made its way into the bill that's now before the committee. The bill contains the policy direction, which was lifted from the report, and suggestions as to how that should be implemented. But without addressing these barriers and involving real commitments and actions by the state, together with employers and those with disabilities, then this bill, as currently written, as a few folks I think have recognized, candidly, will probably, unfortunately, do little to actually improve those outcomes. What it does, instead, is alters the process of the IPP planning team and impinges upon the free choice of consumers and families by dictating what, quote, the priority outcome, end quote, should be, and mandating that that policy guide the development of all IPPs. That is fundamentally inconsistent with person-centered planning, and adding language to the bill saying that as the policy will be implemented consistently with consumers' rights does not make it so. No matter how well-meaning, the state deciding on a single priority outcome for all consumers is not and cannot be made consistent with the Lanterman Act, under which each consumer has the right to choose and determine their own goals and their own desired outcomes. Now, the expressed goal of the bill to promote employment for those with disabilities could be served without fundamentally altering the Lanterman Act. And many, including the ARC, CalDSA, and my own group, KTLP, have proposed alternative language for the policy statement, but those requests so far have fallen on deaf ears. Despite 75 out of 80 pieces of written testimony received by the State Council being against the language you now have before you, the State Council adopted its own language with no changes. Now, in the past week, my group, KTLP, has conducted an extremely unscientific online survey, which, as of this morning, had received 313 responses in 7 days. That's more input in a week than the State Council received from families and individuals who were going to be affected by the policy in 2 years. Now, 2/3 of the respondents to our survey were either persons with developmental disabilities or family members. The remaining third were support staff, advocates, and others. Of those responses, 84.8% said they believed the policy statement currently in the bill should be changed. Only 17.6% said they believed the current wording is consistent with the guarantee of the Lanterman Act that each person shall decide his or her own life goals, while 76.6% said it was not consistent with the Act. When asked to choose between the current wording of the bill and KTLP's alternative language, only 11.2% preferred the current policy statement, while 77.9% preferred our alternative. 11.9% didn't like either version. So we ask that Mr. Bell and the members of the committee listen to consumers and families who overwhelmingly disapprove of the current language in the bill and amend the policy statement and its implementation language so that it furthers its goal without altering and threatening the IPP process or the scope of services that are actually available to choose from. Many fear that setting a single priority outcome will steer resources, what scarce resources there are, away from other alternatives, which are already chronically underfunded. Thank you for your time. We look forward to working with you to improve this important legislation and to promote employment for those with disabilities.
Thank you very much. Other speakers in support?
You mean opposition?
I'm sorry, speakers in opposition.
Hello, my name is Andrew Gambo. I am from the Futures Explorer, and I am in opposition of this bill. To me, it seems like it's giving, it's making it mandatory for anyone who can work. It's saying that they have to work. And the other problem I have is how are they going to fund it? As well as transportation and other issues that may arise. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please, in opposition. Okay. Was he? That's who just spoke.
He spoke with the opposition.
Got it.
I'm a support staff. I'm going to echo for her so that you can better understand her if needed.
Yeah. Hello. My name is Kimberly Williams.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Williams.
And I do Interior Sunday.
And I do, one more time.
Interior Sunday.
I do intend to work someday.
I need some help with doing that now. What?
But I need some help with doing that now.
Now, what I think you're saying is that.
What I think you're saying is that.
You're saying that all people who work now, whether they want to or not.
That all people need to work whether they want to or not.
I don't think that's fair either.
And I don't think that's fair either.
Goodbye. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go, man. I'm just going to grab my bag, okay?
All right, next speaker opposed, please.
Hello, my name is Juan. I want to speak about unemployment. Well, first of all, I want to say nobody should be forced to work. It should be a choice for everybody. And another thing I want to say is about unemployment is that the wording needs to change, because the way the wording is right now is the main focus should be getting a job for everybody. Well, first of all, not everybody is able to work, and not everybody wants to go out and work, and not everybody with a disability is able to work. Because if they made it mandatory to force everybody to work that's not able to, there's going to be a lot of problems that we are not going to want. We're not going to, there are going to be a lot of people that are getting jobs that they don't understand how to do, and we don't want to end up in situations like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, additional speakers in opposition, please.
You want to get a tad bit closer?
I got a couple more minutes.
Okay. Wait. You want me to take it off and make sure that it's closer to the mic? Okay. You're welcome.
Hello, Assembly members. I'm Nicole Bauslog. Many of my friends have already spoken on the concerns we share with butting what you would want us to have as our top priority into law instead of letting us choose. I will always have needs that will be more important to me than employment. Many of us do. For me, I need help with a whole lot of stuff before I can even think about working. If the absolute top priority in law is defined as employment, where is the funding going to come from to support my basic needs? Our system has been cut to the bone already. Please change the wording to be more inclusive to all Californians with developmental disabilities. Make the NA. Thank you for your time and effort on our behalf, Assembly Member Bell. Hello, Assembly members. I'm Nicole Bauslog. Many of my friends have already spoken on the concerns we share with butting what you would want us to have as our top.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay.
I want me to just carry this. Okay.
Okay. How can I help you? We're gonna okay. She would like to speak too. So. Okay.
It's a stair. Okay. Perfect.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Kiera Hedgeland, and a lot of my friends have already spoken. I am not necessarily opposed to employment first, only its wording. Another concern I have is, where are the employers in this? Are they behind us? Are they supporting this? Because if we go out trying to get jobs and the employers aren't supporting it, then it's not going to do any good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers that would like to state their name and affiliation, please? She already spoke. Thank you. All right. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'll just ask, Mr. Chairman, your response to the opposition's concerns.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll deal with the issues that were raised by the opposition. First, the issue of the IPP, and the IPP process is in the Latterman Act. It allows an individual to discuss and make personal choices about the type of employment or not ability to have employment and other services, and design a plan for each person on an individual basis. That's one of the foundations of the Latterman Act. And it allows a wide variety of consumer choices. So it allows various type of persons with disabilities to choose the kind of services and programs that fit their needs as individuals. So it's an individual choice process. The bill that we're proposing here does not change the individual, the IPP process. It does not change it. It does not tell somebody they have to work. It only sets explicit language as saying it's a state priority to find work for people with developmental disabilities. So it does not interfere or impinge on the IPP process. There's no intention whatsoever to do so. I think that the debate that took place in the State Council of Developmental Disabilities, which this is their proposal coming out of their debate, it's almost like no matter how many times you say to people that we're not interfering with the Latterman Act process, that people will still think you are. even though the language is very clear, we're not interfering with the Latimer Act process. The second issue is, I think, workload issues and those kinds of issues. I think the issue there is we're establishing a policy. We're allowing a bottoms-up process rather than a tops-down process. So, as you know, we have 21 regional centers that are nonprofits that are in the state of California. It's up to the regional centers to look at this and develop strategies to implement an employment first policies. Now, the state of California as a whole, top down, that's not the approach we're working on. We're working on asking people as individuals, are you interested in finding a job? Would you like to explore that option? And if so, develop options for those people to find jobs and find work in the private sector, and possibly in the public sector if that's possible. So what we're intending to do is to open the doors by involving the community at the local level to find jobs for people that have developmental disability. This is only the first step in doing so. And it will not force anybody to do anything in terms of working in the private sector. If their Latimer Act process in that they decide that they don't want to do that. So it only gives a new option, a new choice for people, an expanded choice, not a reduced choice. There's some the third. I guess the third area is people think, well, if you're going to do this, you have to have a lot of services and programs and so forth, and expend money and so forth. The stark reality is we cannot, with the budget deficit these days, and the situation we're in, add money to budgets. We are cutting budgets. So the concept of spending a lot of money on services and so forth is something that we did not include in this bill. This is only a policy, and we're looking for leadership at the local level to implement it, and leadership from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities is the next step. So,
and there's no punitive actions that result from the interaction.
No, the Latimer Act does not have, it has complete free choice, and there's no punitive action whatsoever if somebody decides they do not want to have integrated employment versus other kinds of opportunities for them.
Well, I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, that you said you were open to input from others, and I've been handed some suggested languages for your review. But Mr. Chair, I would move the bill with those understandings and.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Any other questions from the committee? Did you want to add something real quick, or do you want to take questions?
No,
okay.
I seconded the motion.
Oh, okay. Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this forth. I do echo some of the concerns of the opposition that, I guess we on this side of the aisle don't know what you guys are going to do next with the budget, so we don't know if you guys are going to continue to cut funds from developmentally disabled programs, and if you do, and this bill is focusing strictly on employment, what happens to people that aren't integrated or are not able to be integrated in the workforce or choose not to be integrated into the workforce? What happens to the services that they have if this is a top priority bill making employment services, making this a top priority? So I do share the concerns of the individuals that testified in opposition because of that reason. Do you anticipate?
Well, the proposed budget, as I understand it, does not have a large degree of cuts for the Department of Developmental Services.
I know there's trigger cuts that were voted for back when the budget was passed originally, and so that being said, and not voting for those cuts, I have a huge concern about isolating one particular. I agree that we need to make sure that that people are treated fairly in the workplace. As an employer, we treat people fairly in the workplace. But my concern is if the state emphasizes only on integrated employment, what happens to people who need food services, help with home assistance, help with things like that are obviously something that people need when they choose not to participate in a work integrated program. And then my other thing is that looking through the report, the language is all through the report that says individuals who are in non-work activities or shelter workshops evolve into integrated competitive employment. So, if they choose not to, all this language leads to believe that they are going to be either forced to or something, but it doesn't identify what the or something is. And then my third, comment is, where are the employers? Did you have discussions with employers on how they could say, things could be, these are positions that are available. We have 22% of these positions available every year. I know that my regional occupation center works with the community and the employers, and we place people out on jobs. I know a lot of people get jobs. There's somebody that just got employed by the chamber. So I know that people with developmentally disabled individuals are being employed. I just wondered, where are the participants from the regional centers that refer people out? Because I know that in our district we do refer people out, and we start programs that for self-employment and all kinds of different things. So where are the employers in this?
Okay, you had a lot of questions. First of all, again, I'm going to stress this more clearly. There is no change in the consumer choice. That is unchanged by this bill. There's absolutely no change in the availability or choice for services in this legislation. This is a legislation that promotes finding private sector jobs for people that have developmental disabilities. That's what this bill does for those which desire to do so. Right now, the state of California is the lowest level of private sector jobs for people with developmental disabilities, way lower than the national average. We want to move that up and find jobs. The typical way that jobs are found are by the community of combination of parents, regional centers, and community organizations that exist. And all those groups work together with employers to find jobs for people with developmental disabilities. It's something I've been involved with for almost 30 years. We have nonprofit organizations that are very active in finding jobs for people with developmental disabilities. We have the regional center, and we have some outstanding community leaders and statewide leaders that have hired people with developmental disabilities, and certain corporate entities have been convinced to make it an effort to do so. And I like to say Carl's Jr. is one that's hired a lot of people. Lucky's, Safeway. There's been many different corporations in California that have stepped forward, and we'd like to encourage more and more. And that's what I think the job of the State Commission on Developmental Disabilities. So we're looking to encourage private employers to hire those people that choose to work in the private sector, and we think that finding jobs in the private sector for people that have developmental disabilities is a good thing. So that's why we propose this bill.
I agree with you that finding jobs in the private sector. What I don't agree with is the individual program plan where it says this bill would require, not shall, not may, not let's see if we participate. Require is the word. The regional center, when developing an individual program plan for transition age youth and working adult, to be guided by the employment first policy. And then the next section, when a consumer is 14 years of age, this bill would require. The word is require, not may, shall, should, if, might. It says require. So that's my huge concern right there. Okay. So I can't support it, but thank you very much.
Mr. Bell, thank you. And I agree with the intent, and I know your heart on these issues, and you want to do what's best for the state of California and all of our citizens. The concerns I have is, I think I became more concerned in light of the testimony in that there's so many amendments being proposed and they're not in writing yet, and I know that you're going to be diligent in working out those amendments and doing a good job. I think my preference would be just to hold the bill back until all those amendments are in it, and then let's talk about it again. But we may be under deadlines where you're not able to do that. I don't know. So as for today, while I agree with the intent, I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I believe that the bill as it is now and potentially amended has too many unintended consequences. It's not defined enough, and so I won't be able to support it today. And then so with that, I'll give you an opportunity to close.
Let's find jobs for people with developmental disabilities. I urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Jones?
No.
Jones, no. Amiano? Grove?
No.
Grove, no. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Portantino? Got 2-2. We need 2 more.
I'm just a guest of the chair today. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify that.
All right, that is Assembly Bill 254 by Assemblymember Bell is on call for 2 more Assembly members to add on to that. And the chair will retake the chairmanship and call the next bill.
Oh, good. I believe our number 2 bill is ready to go, and that's Mr. Nastandi, and welcome. Mr. Nastandi is presenting AB 479. So, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I got the thought for writing this bill after the June budget when we passed, we attempted to pass the governor's ideas on CalWorks, and the legislation became bifurcated when it came to the floor. But the governor's plan was to limit the eligibility time to 48 months, from 60 months down to 48 months. As I said, when the legislation came to our floor, it had been bifurcated to have welfare time limits from 60 to 48 months for adults only, and those adults with children would still continue to receive the 60 months. So we lost a potential, I think it's about $650 million a year in savings by making that change. So what this bill does is simply bring back the governor's initiative of determining eligibility or allowing eligibility only to go to 48 months if they are not participating in the requirements for CalWorks. And that's kind of the point. I believe assistance is appropriate. And I think it's just a matter of degree and a matter of incentives. How do we line incentives with our goal? If our goal is to get people back to work, what's the incentive to do so? And in California, the requirements for CalWorks, we have only met the federal guidelines. We've never actually got to 25% of participants achieving these guidelines. That's I believe, misses that alignment of incentives to the goal. And so I think it's appropriate what the governor has proposed, and which we did not vote for. That's why, once again, this bill is in fact what he proposed, to bring the months from 60 to 48 if they are not participating in the CalWork eligibility requirements. And I ask for an aye vote.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Hey, Brian.
Did she say?
And this is Brian Euler from the LAO to answer any questions or make any comments if you'd like.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Brian Euler from the Legislative Analyst Office. We are here at the request of the author to, we provided technical assistance related to the scoring of the savings from the bill.
We'd like to call speakers in favor, please. Okay. Thank you. Opposition. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Please identify yourself, and first two speakers have 3 minutes.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Kathy Sunderling McDonald with the County Welfare Directors Association. We are opposed to the bill. The bill essentially enacts a full family sanction for children whose parents are not meeting the welfare to work requirements following the 48-month time limit. CWDA and the state have a long-standing policy of not punishing children for what their parents do or do not do in the CalWORKs program, and we urge you to continue that policy today by rejecting the bill. It seems like there's a belief that pulling the rug out from under children will somehow get their parents to buckle down and get those jobs. And I think what we've seen, in reality, it's not that simple. What we've learned over the last 14 years of the CalWORKs program is that there are very capable people who have other reasons that they have difficulty finding a job, and we've seen that highly exacerbated during the recession. We have folks who are coming to seek our assistance who never thought they'd be in a position where they sought assistance through the CalWORKs program, but they have nowhere else to turn. And so as they're moving toward that time limit and looking and working with us for work, if they are unable to find that job that in many areas of the state just doesn't exist, also removing their children from the assistance unit and the family and throwing the entire family off of aid is something that we would urge against and urge you not to do. Another thing that I think we've learned in the recession is that there's a really fine line between us and them. There's many of us in this room have not ever been on a public assistance program. Some of us have. That line between who is us and who is them and how you get there has certainly become much thinner and much more blurred, and it's a situation where you could reasonably see in this recession individuals who we think of as us turning into them, turning into individuals who need that assistance. We are concerned about the loss of the ability to engage these families if we completely remove them from the caseloads and eliminate the child-only grant as is today. What we try to do is, as we're able to, provide services to those families and try to get the families to be able to get back to work. This bill would cut off all ability to do that. It would not even allow that as a county option post 48 months for us to provide those services. And what we've seen in other states is when they've moved from a partial sanction to a full family sanction, which did happen in Texas over the last decade, they have just simply lost touch with tens of thousands of children and families. They don't know where they are. They don't know what's happened to them. And that raises great concerns for our members. And so, unfortunately, we think that the main outcome of this would be to increase poverty among children and increase homelessness among these families. And there are long-lasting effects of child poverty that I believe Ms. Bartholow from the Western Center will address in her testimony. But for all of these reasons, we do oppose the bill and urge your no vote today.
Thank you. Other testimony, please.
Hi, Jessica Bartholow from the Western Center on Law and Poverty. Thank you, Chairman and members. This bill we oppose. It does three things. It ignores the blatant reality of the current economy. It puts children and their families at in grave danger and at risk of increased hunger and homelessness. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And it limits the ability of these families to become engaged and get the support they need to get their back on their feet and out into the economy with sustaining income. So first to point out that the current benefit level for a child-only grant, which is what a family of three receives once they've hit the 48-month limit, is $463 a month. This amount it puts the family at less than 40% of the federal poverty rate. It's called extreme poverty. The kind of research that's out there that says that talks about what happens to families at extreme poverty is pretty overwhelming. Families below 50% of poverty have increased rates of child mortality, increased rates of hospitalization, increased rates of hunger and homelessness, which, by the way, are at an all-time high right now in the United States because of the slow return to a healthy economy. Deep poverty also casts a long shadow on children into their childhood and into adulthood. Taking that income that's already below 50% of the federal poverty line from $463 a month for a family of three to zero is not only unconscionable, but it's also doesn't make any sense if what we're trying to build is an economy here in the state that allows everybody the opportunity to participate in a healthy and robust and growing economy. We oppose the bill for those many reasons. We also opposed the governor's proposal. So not just Mr. Nastandi's bill, but any proposal that would leave families with zero income and leave them with no opportunities to climb out of that. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Hi, Tia Orr on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. I would like to echo the comments of CWDA and Western Center on Law and Poverty, and just add to echo what Kathy Sinderling said, that children should not be punished for what their parents are not complying with. We have workers across the state who interact with employment services and try to provide as many resources as we can for the families who have difficulty reaching employment. If we actually want to get these families to be self-sufficient and do an effective job and get these children to be self-sufficient as well, once they get older, we should encourage that activity and provide funding for counties to be able to get those families back into the job market. Thank you.
Okay. I see some other speakers. Welcome.
I'm Farrah McDade Ting with the California State Association of Counties. Thank you for having us. First, I'd like to echo the comments of CWDA before me, and also mention that with the early release of the budget, we do have the governor proposing substantial changes to the CalWorks program that do incorporate some of what Mr. Nastandi's bill have, and so we are still analyzing those proposed changes as well as how this bill would interact, and we feel that it's premature to begin moving down this path without knowing what the state is going to do budget-wise. Secondly, I'd just like to point out that this measure would affect about 200,000 kids in the state, and we have concerns about counties trying to keep track of the parents who are going on and off, whether they're eligible for the child-only grant or not based on their workload. So that's a significant amount of administration costs for counties, and we are opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers.
Good afternoon, Kevin Aslanian, Coalition for California Welfare Rights Organizations. We support and echo the previous testimony. There's two big problems over here. One is that the primary way you meet the work participation rates are through employment. Right now in California, there are 14 people looking for 3 jobs, and that's all there is out there. And the other thing is that the outcome of this bill would be that when you cut everything off, many of these kids would end up in foster care. As taxpayers, we pay $180 to keep one child on CalWorks. We pay over $2,000 for foster care. So fiscally, it doesn't make sense, and we oppose this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Speakers, last speaker.
Aaron Truex with NASW California chapter, also speaking out in opposition of this bill.
Okay, thank you. Any members have questions? No questions? Okay, then the author may close.
Andre?
Yeah, no, I just, you can comment on this, but, exposing the children to potentially more situations of poverty. We have 2 million children in California living in poverty. I mean, how do you respond to that that statement? That's a pretty powerful statement.
Sure.
And the taking action that appears. I mean, and our budget has been cutting these services consistently over the last 5 years. So this has not been a budget buster. This has been programs that every year have suffered under the budget acts. So what's your response to that?
Sure. My response is, and Mr. Chairman, I'll use my close, is that I think it's a difference in philosophy. I don't think it's a difference in a goal. I hope it's not. I think our goal is to get people to work and back on their feet and self-sufficient. If that is our goal, our discussion should be what's the best way to do that. Ms. Sunderland commented that she used the words lose track, I think, of our members. Well, I didn't know it's government's job to keep track of everybody all through life, and I don't know, the word members to me kind of connotates membership in a club or something like that. They are not. This is a temporary assistance for people, and remember, these folks have not abided by elements of the contract. Say, here are a myriad, and Brian from the LAO can maybe talk about, there's a myriad of ways to qualify. Taking classes, taking certain education, or certain type of internships, things like that, you can still qualify. These are people that simply are not doing anything to further, I think, bring themselves back to self-sufficiency and helping their children. So I think if it's a difference in philosophy of what is the best way to help people to get them self-sufficient, and as I said from the beginning, I do believe assistance is appropriate. I do believe, and I think it's not just assistance from the government, but but also from churches and private entities that we tend to push out when we want to take over the whole system and say we are their caretaker, we know what's best. Other parts of society have other ideas also and other ways to help people. My parish does a lot of great work in the community. Catholic Charities do a lot of fantastic work throughout the United States, and we should encourage that. It doesn't have to be the government only doing it. But once again, going back to the main point is their requirements. If our goal is to get them to be self-sufficient, let's help them do that. And that's why I think the federal legislation wrote that in that way, to say here are things you can do if you can't find a job that you can still qualify for these benefits. These are only for people that choose not to do that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the time very much as a committee, and I ask for an aye vote.
Other questions of members?
I just have a comment. Mr. Standy, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I applaud your efforts to try to bring some type of accountability into people that just choose not to participate to better themselves whatsoever. I understand that we need to provide an assistance and a lifeline to people that are struggling, especially when this body does not do a lot of things to make sure that there are jobs are available out there for employers to be able to provide economic growth and provide jobs. But nevertheless, I'd like to really, really applaud you because, as you stated, it is just for the people who choose not to participate. I mean, you can be on welfare subsistence, and you can go to a class to learn algebra or marketing or business development, and that still qualifies you to have the assistance. And people are just choosing not to better themselves and choosing to stay in that, what I call a generational curse. And so I applaud you for bringing this forward, and I'm honored to be able to support your bill.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just think punishing children should never be an option. The children, they do in fact represent our future, and I think that there's no way around that responsibility. No way around that responsibility, and I think that that this bill moves in the wrong direction, and I have to oppose the bill.
And once again, I appreciate your comments, but we are not out to punish children. We are out to encourage parents to teach the skills to become self-sufficient, to learn those skills, to set an example and say, here, I'm taking this class to better myself in whatever area, as Ms. Grove mentioned. That's what we want to do. And because the opposite of that is, I don't know, your opinion is, you can just have, I guess, no time limit. And just, because if after 4 years they have not chosen to take those steps, you can probably fairly guess they're probably not going to do that. And so I don't know if you propose then to go 20, 30, 40 years. To me, that would be an odd system, but I think that's the logic of that, the conclusion of that logic would be my point. Once again, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Life circumstances, as we try to find our way out of this economic downturn, are difficult for everyone.
I agree.
And so the bottom line is that if our action ends up harming children, then we shouldn't do it.
Do we have a motion on this bill? We have a motion to approve the bill and a second. Okay. And you had your closing. Can we have the roll call, please? Thank you. The motion is to approve the bill.
Bell?
No.
Bell, no. Jones?
Yes.
Jones, aye. Amiano?
No.
Amiano, no. Grove? Aye. Grove, aye. Swanson?
Swanson, no.
Swanson, no. Portantino?
No.
Portantino, no. The bill fails.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Standy. And the last bill today is AB 671 by Mr. Portantino. In the meantime, I will lift the call on the first bill. And I believe we had a couple members not present, so I'll lift the call, Mr. Portantino, before you start on AB 254. We call the roll, please, on that.
Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Portantino?
This is, I'm sorry, AB 254, Mr.
Yes.
Bell? Aye.
Portantino, aye. The bill's out.
The bill's out. And Mr. Portantino has 671, and welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. AB 671 is sponsored by the California chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, and it was introduced to require supervisors in child welfare to have at a minimum a master's degree in social work or a master's degree in behavioral sciences and 3 years of child welfare experience. The intent of the bill is to improve consumer protection and child welfare outcomes by setting a standard of a master's degree level education and training for supervisors. Concerns about the proposal have been raised from other groups, and we've been trying to work to bring everyone to a common ground and achieve agreement around the concept that we're proposing. The chair has also suggested some amendments, which I will accept, and I also want to make a commitment to the County Welfare Directors Association and others as this bill moves forward, that I'm going to continue to work with everyone and understand that if we're blessed to move out of this committee and into the Senate, that I would not take this up for a Senate vote without having that mutual understanding. And I know the chair's office is very concerned about trying to bring compromise. So those folks who have expressed concern have my commitment that if we move out of this committee, I will not bring it up for a vote of the Senate without having agreement on how best to solve the problems.
Okay.
And with me, I have supporters who want to talk about how important this is. Before I go to them, my district office currently has 3 MSWs. I'm a big fan of the education that they go through, the training they go through. God knows they work on me enough and have a lot to offer, which is why I'm passionate about this issue.
They have to have a lot of education and training to work with you, Mr. Portantino.
Absolutely. And you know my wife.
That's right. Witnesses in favor of the bill, please.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Rebecca Gonzalez, and I'm the Director of Government Relations and Political Affairs for the National Association of Social Workers California Chapter. We are the sponsors of AB 671 because we believe that in order to increase consumer protection and produce better outcomes in child welfare services, we need to professionalize the workforce in CWS. Or specifically, we need to hire educated and skilled workers. Supervisor positions in CWS require a high and unique skill set because of the nature of child welfare cases. Supervisors are responsible for helping social workers manage very high caseloads that are and they are ultimately responsible for the outcome of these sensitive and complex cases. A master's degree gives individuals the skills necessary to provide the high level of analysis that's necessary in this position. A master's degree also provides an advanced level of learning and leadership skills that will benefit child welfare services. In short, we believe that no amount of on-the-job experience or training can equal a master's degree. In addition, a master's in social work provides a unique combination of knowledge, values, and skills that cannot be obtained through other degree programs. For example, all MSW students are placed in a direct service placement that is connected to child welfare. For the degree program, students must take an advanced policy class in their first and second year of the program. And also, the MSW degree is not just a clinical degree, which is relevant because these positions don't require therapists. They're basically case management types of positions. Lastly, the Council on Social Work Education Center, or CALSWEC, produces competencies on public child welfare that are embedded within the MSW degree program. And MSW really provides a comprehensive understanding on how to best serve the interests of the child in the context of their environment. And so I want to thank you for your time and attention and ask for your support on this bill.
Thank you. Other witnesses in favor?
My name is Glenn Thomas, and I'm a social worker. I teach at San Jose State in the second-year graduate program. I also have and I do that part-time, I have the unique position of being a supervising social worker in a foster family agency. I support this bill for a number of reasons. One, I went online and I looked at the difference between Supervisor 1 and Supervisor 2 positions in Humboldt County. There's only two differences in either one of those. One is that you have to have a master's level for the second one, and the second part is the severity of the cases. In the last 2 years alone, more than $500 million have been cut from mental health services. My direct experience working with child welfare supervisors, I had one in Contra Costa County tell me just in the last month they're getting an overwhelming number of cases that are being pushed back from mental health as far as severity. So I really think that when you look at these two positions, they're now being blended, that you're getting the severity of cases that are coming down now to the supervisor one. And we need that master's level in order to address those severity of cases. The next part is the deepened knowledge that comes from cultural competency within the master's level programs. I teach one course called Child Practice, which is child therapy course. I get many of the Title IV-E students that are in my class. Within the syllabus alone, there are 28 instances of transcultural competency requirements. So I think that one thing that's really needed is that cultural competency to work with the populations that are coming and being able to address them the best that we can. The last part is that there's actually an availability of Masters of Social Work students available, graduates, for the different positions. And I cite the California Social Work Education Center's statistics. This would be for graduates from last year, and this would be in the rural areas, Bakersfield, Fresno, which I graduated from, and Stanislaus. Currently, there are only 7%, this was last September, 7% that were hired out of Bakersfield, 14% out of Fresno. If we go to last year, there is still from Bakersfield the Masters of Social Work students out there that graduated, 40% that are still pursuing jobs. So in all, if we count last year and this year's graduates, a total of 63% were still pursuing employment opportunities just in September. So I think that combination is there. There's the need for the master's level. There's the competencies that are there. There's the availability of the actually masters to fill those positions. And there are many master's level that are in the regular positions, not even supervisors, are very happy with those salaries. And so I heavily support this bill and think that it gives great protection to the consumers of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Other supporters, please? We have other supporters who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we'll take the other side, the opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Kathy Sunderling McDonald with the County Welfare Directors Association. We have an oppose unless amended position on the bill, and we really appreciate the Chair's effort to try to bridge between the bill as in print and our position, which I'll explain a little bit, though it is very well laid out in the analysis. I want to first, though, express thanks to the author for his commitment to continue working with us, and should the bill move forward today, not move the bill in the Senate unless we're all in agreement. We really appreciate that. And we'll certainly engage and continue to work on the bill with you and your sponsor. Just briefly, we love our social work degreed professionals. You mentioned that you have MSWs in your office. I happen to be married to one, so I'm in love with an MSW. And we certainly try to hire as many of our social work degreed professionals as we possibly can in all of our programs that the County Human Services Department runs. That said, my members have long held a belief that education, training, and experience in the right combination can lead someone to be a good social worker and a good supervisor of other workers in the child welfare program, as this bill would affect. We don't agree with the statement that no combination of education, experience, and training can replace a master's degree. We have seen people rise through the ranks, provide the services on the front line, and grow to become excellent supervisors in the child welfare arena. And so that's why our requested amendment is similar to that the chair has proposed, which is we put in what was in the version from last April to provide that alternative path of education, training, and experience as an alternative to a master's degree, the MSW or the other degrees that are listed in the bill. And we appreciate, again, the move to put that back in with the sunset of 2016. Just in talking with my members, I don't think they're going to change their minds in 2016. I think we'll still have the same belief that that combination is an appropriate path, that someone can be a good supervisor. It's all about making sure we're providing excellent services to children who are victims of abuse and neglect. We think that there's a variety of ways to do that. So with that, we appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to continuing to work with the author.
Mr. Chairman and members, Tim Shannon. I'm representing the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. First of all, I want to thank the author for substantially narrowing the bill from what had been introduced. The nature of our concern, really, it appears on page 7 of your committee analysis. It's the technical amendment that changes the word and to and, which means that the bill would now require that in addition to the degree, the master's degree in marriage family therapy, to be a supervisor, you would have to have 3 years of experience, not or, but and. We've communicated our concern with that hard 3 years to the author and to your staff. We're working with the author. We understand from the sponsor they're willing to entertain adding some flexibility to that, so it might be a substantially similar experience to 3 years, and we don't have the exact formulation of the language, but we will work with the author to come up with that, and we appreciate his commitment not to move the bill forward until we reach some agreement on that. So thank you.
Mr. Portantino, just to clarify, the amendments will be taken up prior to the Appropriations Committee if this bill is proceeded through this committee.
Correct.
So you will take the amendments up.
I will take the amendments as proposed. Again, I'll just reiterate my commitment. I mean, everybody who sat around this table shares the same goal, has the same passion to serve children in the best capacity. This is an amicable conversation. It's my hope to move the bill to the Senate and then address the concerns or not.
Okay, we have committee questions. So, Mr. Amiano.
Yes, I do find the arguments of the opposition quite compelling and reasonable, because I do think you need a mix. I know in teaching, the experience is very, very helpful, as well as having the degree, and I do honor the commitment of my paisano here, and so I don't want to gum up the works. I would vote to get this out of committee, and then we'll see what happens. I can't guarantee until we see everything in print and all that, but that's fine with me, Mr. Portantino.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Vice Chair Jones has a question.
Thank you. Mr. Portantino, one of my concerns is similar to a previous bill, is just this whole concept of amending the bills, and then they're going to get worked out after they leave the committee, and then hopefully they're put together before they get to Senate. So that's just a headache I have with the system. So that's one reason why I won't be supporting it today. The other reason, and probably my most compelling reason for me, is, these systems are managed and operated by each individual county, and I just think it's arrogant of Sacramento to think that we can prescribe one way to do business that's a one-size-fits-all for the entire state. So my concern is that, if this is an important issue, which I believe that it is, why not let the county administrations determine the requirements that they're going to make for the people that they're hiring, rather than have us prescribe it? And I'm just not at a point philosophically that it's our job to prescribe these kind of details to each individual county. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others?
Yeah.
Mr. Swanson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Portantino. Thank you for the bill. I have to say that I fall out on the side of combination of degree and work experience. I think that's a valuable combination, but I also know that you are a legislator of your word, and so that's good by me. And so I would move the bill, Mr. Chairman, with the understanding, because I think that Ms. Portantino will work this out, and in the best interest of all that have testified today. So with that confidence, I think the bill should move forward.
Yeah, and the amendments recommended in analysis to be taken as authors' amendments in the Appropriations Committee.
Yeah.
And is there a second to that? Second? There's a second. Questions on the motion, please? No questions?
If I could just close.
Close, Mr. Portantino.
No, I appreciate the discussion, and just so everybody knows, the path of dealing with social worker and degrees and qualifications, interestingly enough, was not brought forth by the social workers in my office. As I've been out into the system most recently with some of the trials and tribulations that my brother had last year, I would always talk to the social workers. And oftentimes I'd find out that they weren't social workers. They had the badge, they had the credentials, they were functioning in that capacity. Some of them were students, some of them were, bachelor's degrees. So I started to ask questions about the system and the process and about credentials and qualifications. So that's why this came an outgrowth of that conversation. And just again to echo the sentiment of all the folks who are here, everybody wants the best for the patient, for the child, for the system. To address Mr. Jones's concerns, it's a very valuable point or viable point to talk about where's the line of what standards do we set and what do we leave to the counties. And frankly, we wrestle with that all the time. I think it's appropriate for us to set standards and qualifications in some circumstances. I think this is an appropriate place for us to, just like we have graduation requirements. We don't leave every school to decide what the minimum graduation requirements. We as policymakers set those type of requirements. So I think it's appropriate. To, again, confirm the commitment, obviously with the House deadline, I don't know if we'll work it out before it leaves this House, but this committee has my commitment that if it gets to the Senate, I will not move it in the Senate without the agreement. We may not have the agreement by the time it leaves the House, but my word is my word.
Okay.
With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
And if there's no further questions, we'll call roll, please.
Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Jones?
No.
Jones, no. Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Grove? No. Grove, no. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Portantino?
Aye.
Portantino, aye. The bill is out.
Thank you. And that concludes the business of this committee, and we are now adjourned.